Okay, so for question number 1 in the notes, can you find the absolute value of the following expression? So we're just going to see what the absolute value of these different numbers is. So for letter A, the absolute value of -2. Now, what I always think in my head is, how many units is -2 from 0? Because that's what the absolute value is doing. So -2 is going to be 2 units away from 0, okay? Another way you can think of that is you just take this number that's inside and make it positive. That's going to be our answer. For B, the absolute value of 0.1. Well, this is positive, so it's just going to stay itself. So the absolute value of 0.1 is equal to 0.1, okay? That's how many units 0.1 is away from 0. The absolute value of 92. That is just going to be 92. And then for part D, the absolute value of 7/13, a fraction. That's just going to be 7/13. Okay? Because we're making the inside positive. And it was positive to begin with. So it's just itself. Now, I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to let you guys try E and F. And then I'm going to show you guys the answer, and we'll see if you guys got it right. Okay, so for part E, if we have the absolute value of -pi, remember, pi is really just a decimal. Okay, it's a decimal that doesn't repeat, but it's approximately 3.14. So we have -3.14. The absolute value of that, we just knock off that negative, and it is going to be 3.14. But I'm just going to write pi, okay? Because we're just knocking off the negative from what's inside. So the absolute value of -pi equals pi. Now, for F, we have the opposite of the absolute value of -1.1. Okay, and this one was kind of the tricky one out of the batch. So the absolute value of -1.1 is positive 1.1. But we had this negative sign out in front, so we're going to have -1.1. Okay? Even though this is positive, we had this negative sign in front. So that's why our answer is negative. Okay? So if you got those, great job. For number 2, I want to know what numbers are 7 whole units away from 0. So they will have a distance of 7 units. Okay? So we'll be going over 7. Are there going to be more than one answer? And if so, what would they be? Okay? And in math books, you will see this question asked as the absolute value of some number, x, we don't know what it is going to have a distance from 0 of 7. Okay? So we need to know what x will equal. Okay? So I'm going to let you guys think about that for a second. And it possibly might even be 2 answers. Okay? So, one answer that we could have is 7, okay? 7 itself. 7 is actually 7 units from 0. But if we go the opposite direction, -7 is also 7 units from 0. So, the absolute value of x, if it is equal to 7, x could be either 7 or -7. Okay, because both of those are 7 units away from the origin, from 0. And actually, I just found a typo in the notes. So in the notes, I believe you have the absolute value of x equals, and then a blank or blank. It should be just x, okay? Not the absolute value of x. So x equals 7 or -7. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next part is, how might we graph absolute values? Okay? If the absolute value represents the distance from 0, then can we show what points might have a distance from 0 of 3? Okay? And this just ties in with the question we just did. This can be what? So in the end, our numbers x can be either positive 3 or negative 3. So if we needed to graph these, or if we needed to graph the absolute value of x, if it's equal to 3, all we have to do is graph 3 and negative 3. So we'll go over 1, 2, 3 units, put a dot and label it, and then to the left, 3 units, okay, and label it. That is negative 3. Both of these have a distance from 0 of 3. So 1, 2, 3. So that means the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. 1, 2, 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. And that's what our question was asking. Okay? So, the absolute value, when it equals a number, and we're asking for what numbers it could be, can be two different values. So x could equal 3, or x could equal negative 3. If you flip over on your sheet, in your notes, we'll move on to question number 3, which is just some more examples and a little bit more practice. Okay? If we have the absolute value of x is equal to 3, okay, so the distance from the origin of x is going to be equal to 3. X can equal both negative 3 and positive 3. Okay, so we have two answers. And this is actually the same exact question that we just did. Okay, but this is how you'll see it in math books. Okay, so for B, if we have the absolute value of x equals 7.1, that means the distance from 0 of some number is going to be 7.1 units away from 0. So x can be either 7.1, which is the positive one, or negative 7.1. Because both of those numbers are 7.1 units from 0, from our origin. For C, the absolute value of x equals 34. So hopefully you're starting to see the pattern. X can equal 34. X can also equal negative 34. And it doesn't matter what order you put them in. You could say negative 34 or 34. Doesn't matter. For D, however, let's look closely at this problem. The distance of some number from the origin will be negative 4 units away from 0. Now, does that make sense? If we're talking about the distance from something and we're saying it's negative some units, well, that'd be like me saying I'm negative 2 miles away from my home right now, while I'm in school. That doesn't really make any sense. So, when you take the absolute value of something and it equals a negative number, that statement is false. Okay, so this has no solution. Okay, so I was kind of trying to trick you a little bit here, but it's important to know that the absolute value of a number can never be negative. Okay, because remember, we're always dropping whatever sign is inside of our absolute value, so it should always be positive or 0. And if you understand these things, you should be able to get through all the homework and do great on it. Number 4, I'm just asking you to graph the following absolute value problems. So if we have the absolute value of x is equal to 3.5, we know from what we've just done that x can equal both 3.5 or negative 3.5. So all we're going to do is graph those two numbers. So we'll go over 3.5 units, that'll be right here, 3.5, and then we will go left 3.5 units, which will be right here, negative 3.5. Okay, both of these have an absolute value or a distance from 0 of 3.5 units. So for B, x can equal 5 or negative 5. So we're going to go 5 units to the left. We can put a dot here. Label it negative 5. We can also go 5 units to the right. Right here. And it will be 5 units from the origin. Now, your graph may look a little different than mine since you probably have a longer line on your paper, but you still should be going over 5 units, okay? That will not change. And I will put C up here, and let's see if we can get C. The value of x equals 5 halves. Now, if you're not very comfortable with fractions, then let's try to change this number so that we can get into a form that we are comfortable with. So if we want to make it into a mixed number, 2 goes into 5 2 times, because 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so we'll have 2, and then how many halves are left over? It will be 1 half, okay? Because if we take 2 times 2, that's 4, and then plus 1, that is 5. Okay, so 5 halves is equal to 2 and 1 half. And if you think of money, if you split $5 between 2 people, each person gets $2.50, okay? This is also the same as 2.5, okay, which is a decimal. So either way, if you want to write this, 2.5 or 2.5, it's fine with me. Now, if the absolute value of x equals 2.5 or any of these other ones, x can equal negative 2.5 or 2.5. Okay, so we need to graph these two numbers on our number line. So we're going to go to 0, and then either to the right or to the left, 2.5 units. Doesn't matter which one we do first. So I'm going to go right. And 2.5 will be right here. 2.5. That has a distance from 0 of 2.5 units. If you go to the left, okay, to negative 2.5. That also has a distance from 0 of 2.5 units. Okay, so we can deal with fractions, we can deal with decimals, we can deal with whole numbers, we can deal with negative numbers, positive numbers. All of those things we can take the absolute value of. We're just finding the distance from 0.